Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
There are moments in baseball when a player doesn't just leave a team, he leaves a silence behind him. A pause in conversation. A half-finished sentence. And that's exactly what it felt like the moment Bo Bichette stood at a podium in New York, wearing Mets colors, smiling politely while an entire city thousands of miles away collectively leaned back in their chairs and said, "So, that's really it, then." Because for Blue Jays fans, this wasn't just another free agent departure. This was the end of a chapter that many of us thought would stretch on for years, maybe decades, like a favorite book you never want to finish. Welcome back to the Blue Jays Report, where today we're unpacking not just the move itself, but the storm of opinions, whispers, and outright arguments that erupted the second Bo Bichette's introductory press conference wrapped up. Almost immediately, articles began to appear, timelines lit up, and a familiar narrative took shape. Was this the front office's fault? Was there a rift behind closed doors? Did the Blue Jays mismanage one of their brightest stars? Or was this simply a relationship that had quietly run its course while we were all busy arguing about lineups and bullpen usage? Before we go any further, let's ground one important truth, because it's getting lost in the noise. Bo Bichette loved Toronto. Not in a PR-trained, media-friendly way, but in a way that felt genuine. The Blue Jays released a farewell video that hit harder than many expected, and Bo followed it up with his own message, speaking directly to the fans. You could hear it in his words. You could see it in his tone. This was never about the city, never about the supporters who watched him grow from a promising kid into one of the faces of the franchise. Toronto didn't push Bo away. Something else did. And that's where things start to get complicated, because once emotion enters the room, logic tends to slip out the back door. A couple of articles, particularly from Rob Longley and Rosie DiMano at the Toronto Star, poured petrol on a fire that was already burning. Fans started picking sides. Some aimed their frustrations squarely at management. Others shrugged and said this was always inevitable. And suddenly, Bo Bichette's departure became less about baseball and more about blame. One of the most interesting voices to enter the conversation came not from a columnist, but from someone who was actually inside the clubhouse. Whit Merrifield, speaking on the Six Hitting Stretch podcast with Lindsey Dunn, casually dropped what felt like a truth bomb wrapped in calm honesty. He admitted he wasn't surprised Bo didn't return to Toronto. Not because things ended explosively, not because bridges were burned, but because, in his words, it was probably best for both parties that Bo ended up elsewhere. That sentence alone speaks volumes. According to Merrifield, there had been a subtle but real disconnect between Bo and the organization, involving both the front office and, at times, the coaching staff. Nothing dramatic. Nothing headline-grabbing. Just enough friction to slowly wear down a working relationship. And while none of us outside the building can claim insider knowledge, it does begin to explain something that felt undeniably strange throughout the entire free agency period. The Blue Jays never seemed aggressive in bringing Bo back. There was no public chase. No dramatic last-minute push. Just a quiet acceptance that he might walk. That silence felt loud, especially when you consider the player involved. This isn't a fringe contributor or an aging veteran. This is a guy capable of leading the American League in hits, a player who, at his best, looks like he was designed in a laboratory to rake line drives from foul line to foul line. Even if you have questions about the defense, even if you worry about long-term value, it still felt odd that the organization appeared so comfortable letting him go. To understand why, you have to rewind a little. The cracks didn't appear overnight. The 2023 and 2024 seasons were strange years for the Blue Jays, and not just in the standings. Whit Merrifield himself has spoken openly about frustration with front office involvement during that infamous playoff game when Jose Berrios was pulled early. That moment became symbolic, not just of a single decision, but of a broader tension between analytics, management, and players who felt the game slipping out of their hands. Then came 2024, a season that felt off from the very first pitch. A 74-win campaign. Minimal reinforcements. An offense that never quite found its rhythm. And from Bo Bichette's perspective, it was brutal. His performance dipped. Injuries crept in. And every time the camera cut to him on the bench, something looked different. Not angry. Not sulking. Just distant. Anyone who's watched Bo for years could see it. The spark wasn't the same. Publicly, the organization tried to steady the ship. Bo spoke to the media. He said he wanted to be a Blue Jay. The usual reassurances were offered. But the atmosphere never quite settled. It felt like a couple smiling for photos while quietly discussing who gets the sofa in the divorce. Now, should fans be furious about that? Rosie D'Imano would tell you yes, absolutely. Her article pulls no punches, painting a picture of deep frustration, resentment, and what she describes as bitter disappointment on Bo's part. She even suggests that Bichette may have grown tired of living in the shadow of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., positioned as the other star while the franchise rallied around its golden boy. It's a dramatic take, and one that has certainly fueled plenty of debate. But here's where perspective matters. Yes, the Blue Jays could have acted sooner. Just like with Guerrero, they allowed negotiations to drift dangerously close to free agency. When you have a young, elite talent, there's value in making him feel like a cornerstone early, not a question mark to be resolved later. Somewhere along the way, that opportunity slipped through their fingers. At the same time, money cannot be ignored. Bo Bichette signed for serious cash. Over $40 million a year. Some argue Toronto could have matched it easily, pointing to Rogers' deep pockets and a winter of aggressive spending. And technically, that's true. But ability to pay and willingness to pay are two very different things. Front offices don't just hand out contracts based on sentiment. They weigh value, fit, and future flexibility. And it's entirely possible the Jays looked at the price, looked at the relationship, and decided this wasn't a gamble worth taking. That's not villainy. That's business. Sometimes cold, sometimes uncomfortable, but business nonetheless. Workplaces have disagreements. Professional relationships sour. And when that happens, most people don't stay out of loyalty alone. They move on. That's not betrayal. That's life. Personally, I don't feel anger towards the front office over this. Disappointment. Yes. Sadness. Absolutely. Bo Bichette meant a great deal to this city and to this era of Blue Jays baseball. Seeing him in a Mets jersey will sting for a long time. But resentment? That feels misplaced. We don't know what conversations happened behind closed doors. We don't know where compromise failed. Getting furious over half a story rarely leads anywhere good. What matters now is reflection. Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, for all the criticism they receive, have also overseen a return to relevance, playoff appearances, and a roster that once again believes it can compete on the biggest stage. They deserve criticism when they miss, but also recognition when they hit. This situation, more than anything, should be a lesson. When the next wave of stars emerges, when the next contract crossroads arrives, whatever went wrong here needs to be understood and avoided. Because only a handful of people truly know what caused the rift. Bo knows. Ross knows. Mark knows. And that truth will probably never be fully public. But the outcome is clear. This chapter is closed. As fans, all we can do now is watch how the next one unfolds. The Blue Jays are still here. The season will still begin. The spikes will still hit the dirt. And baseball, stubborn and beautiful as ever, will move on. If you've enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, share it with a fellow fan who's still processing the news, and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report for more honest, in-depth Blue Jays commentary. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Are you upset about the Bo Bichette situation, or do you think this was simply time for both sides to move on? Thanks so much for watching, and as always, go Jays!